spot where we are now. The camps were along here. Different ones had different camps. My family was further up. All this was good hunting and fishing. But in the 60s, I think in 1964, the government burned all the camps. These camps were just shacks, fishing shacks, hunting shacks. Some clans fished, some clans were hunters. We were a hunting clan. We did fish, but not like the rest. Where we are now, the government, after they burned all the camps, we rebuilt them all. They burned them again, and says the only camp you can have, and this was a couple of 3, 4, 5 years going by, the only camp you can have is a tent camp, and you can't leave it up for over, I think it was 3 days. And so that pretty much ended it all. But this was a great, and is a great place with a lot of history in here. After burning the camps, the government went to Mexico and got beavers. I don't know if you knew this, Steve. They got a bunch of beavers and turned them loose further down this way. There was not a beaver anywhere around here, and they dammed up all these creeks that were coming into here. And so you had a road system of about 12 miles that was going all through this that you could drive a vehicle through. And a lot of us hunted and fished that way. But the beavers dammed it all up and it's underwater now. So you go down the hill, there's a big clay pit back up that way. You go down that hill, all you see is water, and you could drive forever back in there. And so it was just kind of a way of life that was kind of snuffed out.
And Phil, what were the 3 main clans that primarily lived here?
Well, there was a lot of clans that there were a lot of clans that came up through here, but primarily up north was the Wind.
Holodolgi.
Yeah. The Bird clan.
Bushwolgi.
And the Panther clans.
Gotcholgi.
Those are the ones that were up north of us.
And I don't know if you care to go into some contextual details. So my limited understanding is that Florida had native populations that were almost hiding. Is that there's a history of like the federal government for a long time?
Well, yeah, in the Indian Wars, Andrew Jackson came and was killed. They were just hunting the Indians down and killing them. And so further up the river was pretty much the last stand of where we knew any of them were. And I took Kendall up there, and it's the only big high spot on the river. But that's at Shamuckla up there, Steve. You know the big landing up there? That's actually.
Is it Williams Landing or?
Yeah, whatever it is, but. Kaiser Landing, yeah.
So what's the context that you come into? Your families have been here for a little while.
A long while.
My family's probably been here since 1600s.
Okay.
So that we know of, but they came and went. And this was an amalgamation of different Indians that were all kin, Cusadas and all the same. Muskogans are all, it encompasses a lot of tribes. Yeah, it was a way of life that was lost. I had uncles that would come up here in the river way up further than we are. And there's Rosenham Island is an island up there, and they would stay one at a time, 6 months a year, until their wives would send me or somebody else to go find them and tell them, bring your ass home. You know, you've been gone. And what they did, they traded. They would trade for fish and different things, landings to stay up in there, and they hunted and fished, and it went back to kind of the way it was. And my uncles, some of them were big moonshine makers, and so they did drink it too, pretty much. But that was the Prohibition days.
That's how you get cash.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
When the speckled trout won't trade.
Yeah. But as you see, it's one hell of an ecosystem.
It is. We've seen so many animals
so
far.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you've seen nothing so far.
Ones that you won't see out in normally.
Yeah. All right, Steve. William Philip Kittell with a K. My connection to this area is when I was a boy, my kinfolks, all of them, hunted and fished up this river drainage system and had camps. And so we went everywhere besides here. We ranged from Apalachicola to the Alabama River, and there were camps, and different ones had different camps, but we were all pretty much the same. It was a different way of life then than what it is now. There was hunting and fishing was something that everybody did, just about everybody I knew. And of course that changed in the 60s when the woods got flooded. And then by probably 70, none of us were even coming much. I'd run the river some and fish at night, and different ones of us coon hunted at night, and so we'd do that. Fell by the wayside, and it was a way of life that basically was lost. You see people out here now that are having fun, catching fish and, just being out. Mostly old retired guys and some guys that aren't. But learned a lot in the woods, was taught a lot how to do different things. Walking in a swamp it's a skill to learn to walk and not, even if you're heavy, you can walk if you know how to walk. We never really were afraid in the woods. That's something I never did. I spent more time in the woods than I did anywhere else. My mom, who was a full-blood, was strange in a lot of ways, but she let me out the door at 2 years old. We lived in the woods, and she said because he was always standing at the screen, and we had a dog, and she said the dog would always bring you back. So I would be gone half a day. And here's a woman that was just, crazy about keeping up with me, but then it was like different. But I stayed with my grandma a lot, who was a medicine woman, and I learned a lot from her. I wish I was more into hunting and fishing with my granddad, and he was a farmer. But I still know the plants, where to get them and find them and this, that, and the other. But I didn't pay attention to which one is, I know which one is which, but every plant, a healing plant, is poisonous. You have to have an antidote with it, another plant that counteracts that. And I don't know the counteract, so I find the stuff and give it to people, old women that still know what they're doing.
We were talking about knowledge being passed on generationally. What was that like being a young boy in this time period where people are seeing their way of life disappearing, they're clinging onto it, but also trying to share it with the people who are coming after them?
Well, for me, I was always in the woods anyway, and so it was great for me. I was shooting a BB gun, and my hand wasn't big enough to pull the trigger with the trigger finger, so I used the middle finger.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I was still using that finger, and somebody said, what the heck, man, are you supposed to use this finger? And but I had a good life growing up. I was supposed to learn all the ways, and so different ones would take me, either my granddad, my uncles, or whoever. My life was a loner most of the time. And so I was captured by the old people and the women, so I was around all the fires. And so basically what I did was I sat around all the fires, listened to all the stories till I could tell them myself. I guess that was the way it was passed on. But I was the one that was given that task, and it was a big task. I did enjoy that, but I always longed to be by myself, always. But the woods, if I couldn't go to the woods, I'd probably die. It wouldn't take long. I feel at home in a place like this. Most people scare the shit out of them, but not me. Excuse my French, but.
Do you have early memories? Like, I'm imagining early memories of being on the river. What does that look like for you, those early memories?
Well, the early memories, I mean, we had creeks around home where we lived, and so we were on those all the time anyway, so it wasn't really much different other than a bigger scale. So yeah. I was at home doing anything like that. I always wanted to go. Now, back in the day when if fish were biting or this was going on or that was going on, they just take you out of school, your granddad, your uncle, whatever, to come. And of course, all the kids would be leaving, and so they just pretty much shut down. So it was funny.
And that time period, were the schools segregated? You mentioned
yes,
Indian
they were
schools?
segregated.
Okay.
And Steve's lived the same life I have, basically. And so he knows a lot. His living was made that way, working for Three Rivers. And so he's in touch with the farmers and different ones around that are the long-time residents. I come from the Red Sticks, both from Cusata and which all these peoples are Muskogans, pretty much all of them. No matter what their name is, if they're in the South, they're Muskogans of some kind, some lower, some upper. I come from some of the upper clans, the Red Stick clan, who were the war clan. They ruled in a time of war when a war wasn't going on and it was peacetime. A different bunch ruled. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see any of that. But I'm related to those folks and went to the same places, with my kin. And that's I think the Muldoons, different ones that I knew, that I went to school with, we were all the same. Went different places, but it was basically all the same life. And that just changed. I was at a time of that things kind of broke and went south. Mm-hmm. But that's basically my story. But I've been to every hunting camp and fishing camp there is, from Apalachicola to Alabama River and some on the other side, some even in Mississippi. But my kin was so bad about clinging to some of them to the old way that they would actually, like I was saying earlier, they would leave and go up in this river drainage or another one and just stay. And my grandma would get somebody to go look for them. Yeah. And when I got old enough, I was along on helping to look for them, and they'd say, you've been gone 6 months, you've been gone 8 months, it's time to come home. They just quit their jobs. A couple of them were electricians. They just quit. Yeah. They just quit, I'm done. And they'd come and get right again, and then they'd go back to work. So. And
you were talking about your desire to be alone, your desire for solitude. Do you think that was part of what's driving these people to go?
Probably. Yeah. Probably. I can talk. Look, I've spoken at events at Seminole, 3,200 people, and so I can get up and talk, But I'm still a loner. James Billy's a loner. He's a bad loner, and he's been chief of Seminoles 4 different times, and can give a rousing speech if he wants to, but most of the time he don't want to. Mm-hmm. So, Connecticut State Forest, they had the green corn dance every year, and everybody got together. You never saw so many people. We never saw so many Indians. We never saw so much regalia. Mm-hmm. And so every time I'm down that way, which it's been a while, the Miccosukee, whoever is the Miccosukee chief, I'm past all that now because those guys are my age. But they would always talk about us all getting together and fishing and hunting. And so one of the funny stories about that was we were there for the green corn dance, and that lasted 3 days. So I was out walking the woods with one of my cousins, and we found this big pond out there was full of, I think it was tilapia. And the government was raising them, and it says, "Do not enter." Well, we came on the side that didn't have one of those signs. And so we told everybody there. And so the whole bunch of us, a couple of hundred people are out there fishing, and the feds showed up and called, radioed to so-and-so. And I happened to be standing there as a kid, and the guy says, "It's just a bunch of dumbass Indians. Leave them the hell alone." So it'll cause more trouble than it's worth. So, and it would have probably. But we did that for a long time, and then they quit. I don't know what happened. I don't know if we got run off. I didn't know that story.
The green corn dance.
That was held every year.
I am curious. So it sounds like you were telling me that you were chosen to help carry on some oral traditions. Is that what you were telling me?
Yeah, oral traditions was one of the things. That's why I sat around all the fires, and I really enjoyed all that. I enjoyed listening to all that, and so not every kid, I guess, wanted to do that, but I did. I worked hard. My granddad was a farmer, and I worked for him a lot, and so the good thing about him was we'd work hard, but he'd always say, "Let's go to the creek and go fishing. We're hot." And so I always remember that kind of stuff. But good people, and everybody we knew, all the folks that I knew lived the same way that we did. Nobody had any money. I asked my grandmother one time about the Depression, and she says no different than any other time for us because we had our own hogs, we had our own cows, we had our own chickens and ducks and all that kind of stuff. My grandmother, her dad ran a big store, and in their barn, in my grandmother's barn, in the hayloft, were boxes, wooden boxes stacked about 5-6 feet high, maybe 60 of them. And they were IOUs from the Depression. And I said to my grandma, "They've been there as long as I've been alive. What's up with that?" And she says, we were in better shape than most people. And we just let them have whatever and got IOUs. And I said, "So they didn't pay?" And says, one guy came back 42 years later and paid off his bill, and somebody else did the same. But he says, "But what are you going to do? Folks are hungry." So, but she was the leader of the clan and kept things together.
Your grandmother, who primarily raised you. Yeah.
Along with the help of my.
Oh, what kind of stories were they trying to pass on? And do you know why what was the importance of these stories to these people?
It was basically knowing how to do this or knowing how to do that, and knowing which way, when, as far as hunting and fishing, when to do this and when to do that. And that's stuff that I studied, even still do.
Yeah.
So the high medicine man who has scared the crap out of me on a lot of occasions, and some of the stuff that he gets me into and things that you see that you don't want to see. There was always a place that I hunted. Nobody else would hunt. And I kept getting told that you're gonna meet Bigfoot one day. And so I'm out there hunting one, and nobody hunted in there. It was like a couple thousand acres, and it was great for me. And so I'm sitting there leaning up against a tree, and there's deer coming down through the bottom. And the damnedest scream and yell you ever heard. And they hauled ass. And I sat there a few minutes, and I thought, if it gets any closer, because it was a ways off. And so it yelled again. It was half that distance, and so I boogied out of there. And I don't guess I ever went back. So there was also a legend of Littlefoot. So I moved to where I'm living now, and some of the neighbors around there, there's a place across the bay from us and down. It was a big place. And I had permission to go in there and look around. They were trying to sell the place. So we drive in there with a truck. We have to walk maybe half a mile down a dirt road. And as I'm walking there, I see this little track, like a baby track. And so there was 3 guys with me, and they said, what are you looking at? I said, this track. I said, there's the river, Blackwater River. And I said, there's this baby track in the sand. And I said, it goes in a swamp right there. And I said, that swamp's over your head. And so they said, well, what do you think it is? I said, it's Littlefoot. And I said, it's supposed to be really bad. So I called the medicine man, and he says, stay away from there. He said, Littlefoot will bring other little feet, and they will eat y'all's ass. That's exactly what he said. And he was serious as a heart attack about it. She knows who I'm talking about. So, yeah. But there's a lot of different stories, things that happen.
There's so much instability. I'm sure if you look at what you're telling me about people's recent history, there's so much instability. There's so much people having to be moved. How much knowledge do you think has gotten passed on? How much knowledge gets lost? I guess as we're talking to you, as you're aging out, what?
I think most of it has been lost.
Yeah.
I think most of it has been lost. You got a few people scattered around that still know what's going on. But here's the deal. Medicine for here is not medicine at Seminole, because that stuff doesn't grow. Medicine from here is not medicine in Oklahoma, because they wouldn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so the folks in Oklahoma are afraid of our area, because it's said by every tribe, the medicine in your area is way stronger than anything that we got. And it worries them that somebody's going to put something on them that will stick. So, and that's a funny thing to me, but you're rooted in one society, and I guess I live in both. My granny, being a medicine woman, we never went to a doctor or anything, but she'd put the god awful of smelling potions on you. Yeah, my mom got bitten by a big German Shepherd, and she put that stuff on her, and it was a huge scar on her, but it healed right up. It was like this big right here.
You want to share that? That's Yopon.
Yeah,
For black drink.
Yopon Holly.
Because they don't know about that usually. You're supposed to drink it around in a group, and we purge ourselves like once a year. You're supposed to do it like once to twice a year. You
make just a tea out of it, and it's a good tea. If you keep cooking it, it turns black, and it's called a black drink, and you'll puke your guts out when you drink that, if you're not used to drinking it. The best way to do it is put it in an oven, leave it on there, just put it in there and put it in an oven in a pan, heat it up, and it'll get crispy, and then you can grind it up and go to boiling it. If you want to make black drink, or if you want just a regular tea, don't cook it.
At what points do you feel like there's the parts of the native traditions, and then you have this Christian tradition? What part of the native traditions do you think informs who you are and was informing your kinfolks' lives?
I think it was pretty much all intertwined, because all of us were kinfolks that went to church together. And funny story about that, this guy would come in and hold these meetings, and he'd holler and scream at everybody and tell me how bad I was, and I knew better than that. So fast forward about 20-something years, and his nephew worked for me. And I said, I've never seen you without a long sleeve shirt on. Why is that? He rolled his sleeves up and he was tattooed all the way up here, all here. I mean, and he said, this is from Pensacola Christian School. I said, what? He said, my uncle is the one that used to come to your church and hold those meetings, and said he was the biggest reprobate of them all. And my mom and grandma and all, they thought he was the greatest. But you're just a man. It doesn't matter, you know. You're just a man. You're just a woman.
Yeah.
So we're all the same.